Well, my name is Jim Caseman, and again, we're doing a mini series on the life of Jim and Kathleen Caseman and how the ministry started and how we were raised and all that sort of stuff. And so now we left off, Desi and I, and my oldest daughter, we're on our trip out to Oregon, state of Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia for 30 nights in a row of Full Gospel Businessmen's banquets. Those of you that have been around a while and are still remember the Full Gospel Businessmen, that got to be a long night. And eating and all the testimonies, and finally they'd get to the main speaker. But we missed the first 3 nights. What happened is we left Minnesota, we got to Bismarck, North Dakota, and as we left Bismarck, now we had about a little over 100 miles left before we'd hit the Montana border. We started getting into strong winds, snow, a blizzard. Well, that snow's blowing, and it's building snowbanks underneath the overpasses of the interstate. And so what I would do, I would follow a semi. I would find, and he would plow through that snow, and I would come in right behind with our car, and we could come through. And I don't know how many of those we did, but we did it all the way from Bismarck to the last exit before we were to leave North Dakota. And now it's really getting deep. And the truck goes through, and I almost did not get through. It got to be too deep. And I said, this is it. We've got to get off the interstate. And I knew there was an exit right in front of us. And I knew there was a gas station there, Beach, North Dakota. And we went up across, and oh my goodness, a lot of cars had already pulled off the interstate. And so we're probably half mile from Beach. And so people already we parked our car, of course, and then people were coming in from town and picking us up and taking us into their homes to spend the night and all that sort of stuff. Because Beach is a fairly small town. And I don't know if they had a motel. If they did, it certainly filled up real quick. And wouldn't you know it, we stayed in a home. The man owned the theater in town. So as it turned out, we ended up stranded there for 3 nights. So we had free movies. We go down, I guess we walked down to the theater. And then the next day, of course, you could hear the news. There were all kinds of people stranded on the interstate. They had to spend the night in their car. Hopefully, most of them had enough gas to keep the car warm or whatever. But it was a mess. And the whole interstate was blocked. They had to fly hay in for the cattle. They're out there in the prairies or pastures or wherever. They had to fly hay in to feed the cattle. It was a mess. It was a major blizzard. Well, on the 3rd day, then we were able to leave town. The roads are open, and Montana, that part of Montana got in onto the blizzard too, but the roads are all open now. And so we're heading out to the state of Washington and Oregon, and to get hooked up with our meetings. All right, after that then, we headed got back to Redwood Falls, probably the very first week of February, I suppose. And then, well, that was it. Then, now, when I came to Redwood Falls to help them turn into a church, I did tell them the main ministry is the traveling ministry, and I'll do whatever I can to be as many Sunday mornings as I can. And some Sundays it won't be because I'll be gone traveling and ministering in other churches. And they said that was okay. And I said, I'll stay with you until you're big enough to support a regular full-time pastor. Because again, the main ministry is the traveling ministry. Well, they were good with that. And then come the spring of 1978, I announced, that the church is big enough now to support a pastor. And of course, they came to me and wanted to know if I would consider staying, and they would make it worth my while. Now, they already were making it worth. They were furnishing a parsonage. I had a very good they gave us this monthly salary. There was charge accounts at the gas station, at the hardware store. I mean, they really took good care of us. And now they're going to up it a notch if I would consider to stay. And then one of them made this statement, and we could probably even let you go out on the road one Sunday a month. And course, I could feel the choke around my throat, and I knew that wasn't going to work. And because the main ministry is a traveling minister, just like I told him. So I said, well, I'm really sorry. I said, I'm going to have to pass on that offer. But like I told you in the beginning, this is the main ministry. So I did stay on a little longer until we finally found a man. And so I guess it would have been kind of towards the end of the summer, 78. We moved back to Willmar, Minnesota. And then this time, we had some other men were looking for a house for us, and we'd never bought a home in our marriage up to this point. And we were married in 64, and this is now 1978. And so we located a fairly new house. It was, like only 2-3 years old, as I remember. And it was on 5 acres, and it had a little metal barn that you could have a horse or what have you, and then 5 acres, and then part of the 5 acres was fenced off for whatever you had for a pet, a horse or something else that could be out there grazing in the pasture. And so it was really neat. And it was the first one, like I said, that we owned. It was a little 3-bedroom home, and it was nice. And 5 miles north of Willmar, 5 miles north. All right. So then, we then started Word of Faith Church in the Holiday Inn because the original church, like I said, its doors were closed, they disbanded. And I think I already shared with you of the 82 people, a little over 80 people is what we ended up with when we left. And 44 of those people ended up going to the Rhema Bible Training Center. That was incredible. That was really incredible. And so we started the church. And now the word was out. And so people had already heard about us or either visited the church when I used to pastor there in town, the first church, and they wanted to have home Bible studies. And it was really the thing in those years. It was really popular to have a Bible study in your own home. And so then, before I realized it, we had a Bible study in Montevideo, Minnesota. That would be 50 miles that way from Willmar, that way. Hutchinson, 50 miles. Minneapolis, 100 miles. Alexander, 60 miles that way. And then we have we started this church in the Holiday Inn in Willmar. So we had 5 places. Well, November 1978, Mark and Brenda Thomas moved to Willmar to help me. Now, Mark Thomas and Ross Yeomans were part of the original church of 12 people. And after that first year with them, they took off and went to Rhema. And then in 75, 76, fall of 76, I guess that would have been. And then in 1977, Mark, of course, found Brenda as a wife down there in Rhema, and they got married in 1977. And then they worked at Rhema for a little bit, from what I understand, and then they came to Willmar to help us. And they did help, for a while, pastoring that prayer group in Hutchinson that turned into a church, Montevideo, and Minneapolis, I guess. And so they were helping. Now, what would happen originally, I would do 3 of those churches, and he'd do 2 on a Sunday morning. And then next Sunday, he'd do 3, and I'd do 2. And we just did that until they were big enough to support a pastor, and then we'd turn it over to a pastor. Now, I have no idea what I'm doing. This was not part of the plan. I mean, I didn't know what. I just knew I wanted to teach people faith and how to be led by the Spirit. And so I did my best to hear from God, what to do, where to go, how to do it. But I'm not up to speed on church government or anything like that. That was just a religion that we had when I was growing up. We went there unless there was something else to do. So I didn't understand church government or anything like that. And so I had to, we had to come up with a way to get up to speed. Well, I see we're about out of time, so I'll pick it up on the next session. Meanwhile, just be blessed richly.